Alright, so this Knife Thoughts video is going to be on this knife. This is the Great Asian Cutlery made Northfield brand number 92 Eureka Jack and Sambar Stag. And they've done these knives, this pattern before, but they're doing another run here in 2019. You can still get these in Sambar Stag as of when I'm making this video, as well as in some other patterns, so definitely one to check out if you're interested in it. But as you can see, it's the 92 pattern. It's the this is the blade designation, so it's a spear point main blade, has 2 blades and made in 2019. So what is a Eureka Jack? So a Eureka Jack is a serpentine pattern with a humpback, and it's very similar, if you're familiar with the recent 29 pattern, it's very similar to the 29 pattern if you just reverse it. So you can see that the 29 is also a humpback, but the 92 is a little bit longer, a little bit more slender, and has a more squared bolster here at what is the top on the 92, and which is the rounded bolster on the bottom of the 29. So it's similar to the 29, and you can see here's a 56. It's similar to a dog leg, but with that humpback. So this is the dog leg pattern, similar to trappers and things like that. But the 92 has the humpback. And I've seen some people asking why knives have this humpback. And there are a couple reasons. One is that it adds material to the spring at the spring pin, which is if a spring is going to break, where it's going to break. This is the kind of the point where there's the most flex and everything like that. So it adds some material there, and most knives have extra material there. So I'll show you a 93 pattern. So this is the recent 93 pattern. This is a Way North Cutlery lamb foot in smooth white bone. And you can see that there's a hump on the inside. So no matter whether the hump is on the back or on the inside, there's going to be a little bit extra material almost always at that spring pin. So when the hump is on the inside, like on this or on lots of other patterns, what it can do is it can make blade wrap more likely, because when, let's see, I'll show it with this. When this blade closes, the edge is going to be closest to the back spring at that hump generally. So sometimes there can be blade wrap from that hump. So adding the hump on the back of the spring rather than on the inside or the blade well side makes it less likely for there to be blade wrap. So I do like that as a feature. Now the other reason is that it's just an aesthetic choice. So it gives it a different look, and some people like that look. I don't really have a great preference either way on the aesthetic look of the humpback, but like I say, I do like that it makes the blade wrap a little bit less likely. So that's what the Eureka Jack pattern is. It's a 2-blade pattern, as I said, and we'll look at the blades here in a second. But first I want to look at this Stag. So I was able to get this knife from Ken of Blue Creek Cutlery. He had 2 available when he emailed me, and I got to pick out of the 2, and this one was my easy pick because I think this is really, really great Stag. So you can see that it has some ridges of kind of what I call popcorn or knobs that I really like. It gives the Stag some texture. It's nicely polished from GEC, not overly polished, but enough that it's smooth, which I like a lot. And it's really well matched. You can see that these ridges almost kind of match up from side to side, and it has very similar popcorn on the other side. So I was really, really happy with this Stag. I think it's one of the best Stag I've gotten from GEC or anywhere, because GEC has the best Stag of current knives being made. I had a 43 that I have a video on, so check that out if you're interested in it, in Stag, that had really beautiful Stag also, but I do think that this might beat it. And then here's another example of Stag that I really like from GEC. It's a little bit of a different style, I guess you'd say, of Stag. It is more of a ridge. So there's not really too much popcorn or knobs on this, but it has nice ridges on both sides. And this is the 82 Dixie stock knife. So both really nice Stag, but I do think I prefer the gnarliness or knobbiness or popcorn of the Stag on this 92. The other thing with this Stag is that it's not too thick. Sometimes Stag can be really thick. Makes it, for me, I often carry my slip joints in my back right pocket. Makes it a little bit tougher to carry because if you sit down, and it's really thick, it can get in the way. But this one isn't too thick. Sometimes Stag can be really thin too. This isn't too thin either. It's got a little bit of a concavity to it, but not too much. And I'm just really, really happy with this Stag that I got on this 92. So those are the handles. And then the blades on this are a main blade, and you can see it has a half stop that is a spear point with a match strike pull. They've been doing, I guess, they did a similar match strike pull spear point blade on the 77 Barlow. So you can see those kind of ridges or cutouts on the long pull there are called a match strike because supposedly they were created so that you could strike a match on it. I still haven't been able to get any strike anywhere matches, so I haven't tried it, but I've seen people do it. It can work. It's more, again, of an aesthetic thing, but that's the supposed reason for the match strike pull. You can see that it's not the same spear point as on the 77. It is a little bit wider and has a little bit more abrupt of a downturn at the spine towards the tip. And I think it's a nice classic spear shape. GEC does a lot of spear points, a lot of different spear points, and I think this is a nice one generally. And you can see that it has the Northfield Unexcelled trademark etch, classic etch. I am not typically a huge fan of etches unless there's something, particular to the knife or special about it, but I don't have a problem with this etch. You can see the pattern number again here. And there's really nice action on this main blade. Closes smoothly, opens smoothly, both to the half stop and full. Nice action, walk and talk, as you can hear and see. And it's right at about a 5 pull. People complain either way if GEC makes too strong pulls or too light of pulls. I don't think there's anything to complain about on this one. It's pretty much perfect in my opinion. As you can see, the tip is close to, being proud, but it's not proud. I can't really catch my finger on it, and I think that's in large part because of the downturn, the angle of the spine. It's a little close for me. I think if I was going to keep this knife, which unfortunately I'm not able to keep it, I would have to file the kick after, a sharpening or two. But I haven't sharpened this one yet because I'm not keeping it. The edge looks nice. Sometimes GEC has pretty thick points, especially on spear points, or thick edges at the point. This one looks nicely done. And then the secondary, which on the previous run, the secondary was also a coping blade, but it was on the mark side. And the problem with that was that the secondary blade got in the way of opening the main blade. So on this run, they put it on the pile side, and I like that change. Some people prefer it on the mark side. I've heard it called American style to have it on the mark side, and then English style to have it on the pile side. I'm not super sure of that, if that's a generally accepted term, but I like it on the pile side because it doesn't interfere with, accessing that main blade. So the secondary is a coping blade, which is basically kind of a cut-off pen blade. It has a straight edge, straight spine, and then a straight cut from the spine to the point. No rounding like on a sheep foot, for example, on this 15 or on the 29. So the sheep foot has a little bit of a rounding and nowhere near as much rounding as on a Warncliffe like on this 82. So it's a good little blade for pull cuts, like opening boxes, cutting paper, things like that. You can see it says GEC Car, which is for carbon. This is a carbon steel knife. It's not stainless steel. Has a half stop and opens up. No blade play on either blade, by the way. And you can see the spring is flush at at full open, not really flush at half stop on the main blade, and then flush at closed. It's flush at closed on the secondary, not flush at half stop, and flush at full open. Again, not something that I worry about too much. Some people do though, so it's a good thing to show, I guess. But I like this little blade for, if I'm gonna have a two-blade jack, I think that the coping is a good secondary blade. Sometimes the point of a coping blade can get in the way, but because it's a little bit lower on the frame, I don't think that it does on this model. My fingers kind of hit above and below that point. So I don't think you'd have too much trouble with that, and it does sit nicely within the frame. Now, the secondary, the coping on mine is a little bit off center. So you can see that it's a little bit towards this pile side. And that's something that, from what I've read, from what I've heard online, is relatively common on this run of the Eureka Jack. For me, it's not a huge deal because it's not touching the liner. As you can see, there's space there. And when you open it, you're not pressing it towards the liner that it's closer to, you're pressing it towards the other. So you're not gonna have the blade rubbing the liner or anything like that. So for me, that's not a huge deal, but it is something to be aware of. From what I've heard, a lot of people, or several people, have had their secondaries be off center slightly on this run. Now, another thing to notice about this secondary is, unlike a lot of GECs, for example, the 56, this has what's called a wraparound spring. So this spring, instead of just stopping where the main blade spring stops, as on the 56, it actually wraps around and comes part of the way up the blade well to the secondary. And I think that's a nice little touch. It just gives it, a little bit more, I guess, enclosed, tighter feel or look to it. You can see that it is the whole way, so you're not going to have stuff getting stuck down in if it was just, not enclosed. You can see how that works there. And I do like that. I think that it's a nice touch for this pattern. Now, the secondary blade is a little bit lighter pull. I'd say it's a 4, maybe a 4.5, closer to a 4, but it has nice action, as you can see. Snaps to the half stop, snaps closed, easy to open. So again, especially on a secondary, a small blade like this, where you're not going to be doing super hard cutting, I think that 4-ish pull is just where it should be. Doesn't need to be stronger, and doesn't need to be lighter. I think that it's nice and easy to open, which is a good thing. If you're actually using a knife, having the blades be easy to open is a definite plus. So those are the blades, and to give you some quick comparisons between some knives that you might be more familiar with, this is the Gradation Cutlery number 15 pattern, definitely their most, the pattern they've made the most knives of. It's 3.5 inches closed, so you can see that the 92 is a little bit longer, probably about 1/4 to 1/2 inch longer, so around 3 3/4 or 4 inches closed. And then this is the classic case full-size trapper, and you can see that it's a good bit bigger. I think it's about 4 1/4 closed, so it could be a little bit bigger, but anyway, you can see the size difference here. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with this. A lot of people carry the case full-size trapper. So that's pretty much everything about this Eureka Jack. Like I said, these are available as far as when I am making this video. There are Stag examples of this knife available at a couple dealers. And there are definitely ones available in other handle materials. So if it's something that draws your eye, gets your attention, check it out, see if you'd like to grab one. Like I said, I got this from Ken at Blue Creek Cutlery, so check out his site. But there are lots of other dealers you can get them from also. I don't think he has any of the Stag models left. So if you're looking for Stag, you might have to look elsewhere. But it's a really, really beautiful knife. Again, I do like this humpback design because it makes the issue of blade wrap less likely. I got really, really beautiful Stag. This is, again, maybe the best Stag that I've ever gotten on any knife from any company, but also from GEC. And it's just a nice kind of classic pattern. Like I said, I won't be able to keep this one, but it's one that I've been really happy to get to check out. I guess I didn't mention, there's no gaps whatsoever. I mean, not even anywhere close to any gaps. It is very, very tightly made. So not only a beautifully made knife in the sense that it has really nice handles and nice features, like these cut swedges, drawn swedges on the coping blade. So a cut swedge is when it's a hard entry, basically. They cut into it. And then a drawn swedge is like this, where they kind of softly start the swedge. So nice features that make it very classic looking, and then also just really well made with those nice pulls, action on both blades, no blade play, no gaps. Just a really great knife that I'm happy to have gotten the chance to check out before moving it along. So if you've enjoyed this video, I've got videos on pretty much all the other knives I've shown, as well as articles on a lot of them. So check out my other videos here, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell for notifications when I post new videos. Also, don't forget to check out knifethoughts.com, where I post articles on these knives, and my social media on Instagram and Facebook at Knife Thoughts, where I post pictures and things like that about the knives. And as always, don't forget to go out and do good.